Welcome to the Value of Recruitment podcast with me, Jon Brooks. Sponsored by Atlas, the recruitment platform helping you become an AI-powered recruiter. This week, my guest is Tracey George, Chief Operating Officer at TPP, a specialist charity and non-profit recruiter. In the podcast, we talk about how Tracey has changed the way TPP talks about value with their clients. Tracey shares her journey of creating more confidence around expertise and process across the whole business, not just consultants, and how that's changed the way they engage with their clients. We also talk about how recruiters can showcase best practice processes to hiring managers and how that creates better outcomes for clients, candidates, and consultants. Tracey gives us an insight into the value of both temp and perm recruitment and shares so many tips for other recruiters to learn from. Enjoy the show. I hope you find it valuable. Tracey, thank you for joining us.
Hi, Jon. Thanks for having me. Finally got to the podcast.
Yes, I've been asking you for a long time. Now, we worked together pretty recently on a big pricing project. So I know quite a lot of your views on value, on pricing, on changing how we present our value to our clients. So really interested to get into all of that. But we kick off with the big question. How valuable is recruitment in your eyes?
Yes, and it is a big one. I think, the most obvious thing to say is, any organization that lacks people at any given point or particular skills that those people bring to an organization are going to come up against some challenges. There's going to be challenges with whatever it is that they do. In our case, working with charities and non-profits, delivering their services, etc. I think recruitment helps with attracting good people, and good people do good work. And those good people also help then to attract further good people to the organization. So for me, it's the people side. It's invaluable. Organizations just can't operate effectively without the people. And I think the other point I would make is, in our sector, we've done a recent survey with organizations in the nonprofit sector, and just shy of 40% of those organizations are still reporting struggles with recruitment, particularly over the last 12 months. So there is still very much a demand for recruitment services for organizations like ourselves to support organizations when they are struggling to recruit. And then I suppose, again, just thinking about our specialism, when organizations, charities thrive, the whole society really benefits from that. So, I think it is really critical to have organizations like ours really supporting these organizations to find people, because, a good, healthy third sector benefits everybody in society and even in, across the world in some cases. So, yes, I think that's, yeah.
Yeah, that's a big answer to a big question. Absolutely, it is huge. And yeah, your sector, as you say, the third sector, the charity sector, is so important. It is saving lives, transforming lives, solving the biggest problems. Tell us a bit about, so one of the challenges for you, for TPP, is you are a commercial organization supplying to the charity sector. Now, kind of on first look, sometimes people think, it's the charity sector. Lots of suppliers might think, I'll give a discount, a charity discount if I'm providing services to charities. You're a commercial organization. Do you have to work harder to show your value to those charities where money is key to them?
Yeah, I think we have to take a slightly different approach, I think, when it comes to thinking about who we are working with, really sort of understanding their mission, their values. I think there can be a tendency when you're working with charitable organizations, non-profit organizations, to just assume that everything is centered around the cost and the price. And obviously, there's no doubt that a lot of organizations are struggling with funding, and there are various challenges when it comes to, there's demand for their services has never been higher really in recent years. So there are those challenges, but I think, we have to really consciously think about that and not necessarily default to making assumptions that price and cost is the most important thing, and really think about what are the challenges that these organizations are facing in light of not having the right people, or lacking skills at a particular time, or maybe the speed at which they need to find people, depending on what that is. So I think we always have to keep in the forefront that we need to really understand what the challenges are that organization is facing, and make sure that when we are, selling to these organizations, positioning our services, that we are really listening to what their needs are at that given point, and making sure that we adapt what we offer to meet those needs. And sometimes it can be cost. Sometimes it is about, budget restraints, but it's not always the case. And I think that's, been something we've really had to think quite a lot about, and ensure that we keep at the forefront of our discussions and conversations with clients.
Yeah, I think that's a really good message. It's really in focus when you're talking to charities, but it's an important message to every recruiter. Is cost is often, it's a factor, but it's often not the biggest factor. It's often not the driver. I know, in a previous career, I worked in fundraising. Fundraising very similar to commercial sales in some respects. The opportunity is huge. You get the right person in, a charity gets a top fundraiser in, that can transform the organization. So, for a fee of, I don't know, £5,000, £6,000, that person, by getting the right person, they might be generating an extra £100,000 a year, for example.
Yeah.
So yes, cost is in there. Yes, you're going to charge them a fee, but that value, that opportunity is huge. And as you say, you need to tease that out from each client and say, well, what's important?
Yeah, and we know charitable organizations are very focused on impact, and they need to be as efficient as possible. And I suppose we, try to really understand that. And when we are positioning solutions, either through our services or through the people that they are hiring, is that we can demonstrate the impact that these people will have, and the way in which we can bring efficiencies to the recruitment processes in terms of the speed at which we can, get someone on board, or whatever that might be. So
one of the amazing things about recruitment is, even when you've really committed to a sector and you're a real specialist, there is a lot of competition from other agencies. In the UK, you're always going to find you're up against other agencies. So you've got your niche, you really understand your sector, but how do you stand out even in that sector?
I mean, I think when it comes to recruitment, there are just very simple things that we can do as agencies to stand out. And that, things like do what you say you're going to do, listen actively to your clients, get back to people. We know that that's a notorious kind of gripe from candidates. So there are some basic things that we really do pride ourselves on in that respect. I think the other thing that we have focused on, particularly through the project that we've worked on with you, is creating, there was definitely more of a demand from our clients to come up with more creative services or pricing solutions or options. And, we kept kind of finding ourselves at this point of, we've got these rates, we do recruitment. What are we missing in terms of, being more creative with options? And I think that has been a big thing that we focused on to ensure that we stand out, giving organizations choice, and adapting our services according to their specific needs. And that's still within a framework, it's not completely, anything goes. It's very much, sort of having a framework within which we can work to make sure that we can tailor how we work with those organizations. The other thing I think that really makes TPP stand out is that we really have put inclusion at the heart of everything that we do. and that's, it goes from everything from our interactions with our candidates and clients, how we operate internally. We put a lot of emphasis on educating and supporting organizations, which I think we'll come on to later. But making sure that we demonstrate sort of best practice in terms of inclusion is another thing that I think really stands out or makes us stand out against competition. And then bearing in mind the sector that we work within, we also have quite a developed giving back program to make sure that we are sort of well aligned with the sector that we serve, that we, through those giving back services, gain a better understanding of these organizations, get closer to them in terms of, what their needs are. And, for example, we offer free volunteer advertising to organizations. And, that is a really highly valued free service that we offer, and really gets us close to understanding how volunteers work within those organizations, for example. So I'd say probably those sorts of things. The other thing I will just quickly add is that we, in terms of a lot of organizations will sort of claim that they live through their values, etc. And I think that, that is something that we pride ourselves on. And where we have got values, so for example, one of them is do the right thing. We try to back that up with some sort of evidence or, an approach that is tangible. So, we are members of the REC, but we are also audited by them every 2 years to have the REC audited status. And that is, something that we pay the privilege for doing. So I think we like to sort of evidence that to our clients. And again, that's another thing that I think, just adds to our credibility when it comes to claims that we make about how we work and how we are different.
Yeah, it's really important. Like in my work, anyone can claim anything, talk is cheap. So you've got to go beyond that. If you say, we do the right thing, we are a best practice recruiter, for example. A client should and could rightly say, so what? Or what does that mean?
Exactly.
So to be able to, the answer you just gave is really powerful. You can imagine a potential client being like, oh wow, that's amazing. Okay, you're audited every 2 years, almost like an Ofsted or other regulatory thing. I've got more confidence both in your process and actually that you back up your claims.
Yeah.
And when we're picking up new clients, the most important thing is developing trust, I think, and developing trust as quickly as possible. They need to trust you. So just hoping that they take you on your word.
Yeah.
Yeah, we create impact. Trust us. Just doesn't do it for most clients because anyone can say that. So I love that idea of backing that up by saying, we're a best practice recruiter. Here's the proof.
Yeah.
And even better if it's ongoing proof, not that you won an award back in 2013 and haven't updated it, for example.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, I love so much about what you said there. I think that what you said about choice was really important. I think people who aren't in the charity sector might think our charities are probably all the same, and probably most people would default to thinking, cost is their biggest issue. But you're absolutely right. Different charities do want different things, and you've moved away from having a one size fits all service, which then allows you to provide the right service to individual clients, which I think is really, really powerful. And then tying that with the giving back, you've then got you're not just giving back, you're actually learning from it, you're understanding more about your clients. And I see that with recruiters in other areas. I talk a lot with people about they're able to facilitate their industry, so they might be bringing networks together. But in doing that, you don't just say, we've given something of value to our network. You're actually part of those conversations, and that puts you in a much stronger position to then say, oh, I can hear you've got this challenge. I know, yeah, you're talking about this problem. How can we help? Which is a really powerful, valuable thing to say.
Yeah.
One of the other things I think you do differently is your grant initiative. So talk to us a bit about that, and specifically how that helps you focus on value and learn what your clients value.
Yeah, I think the timing of the podcast is brilliant, actually, because it was just last week that we heard from the REC. So we entered into their awards category for the Diversity Initiative of the Year, and actually we got shortlisted. So really, really pleased to get that news last week. But the reason I mention that is because it's the entry was very much sort of based on our grant initiative, which I'll just explain a little bit more of. So I suppose this is very much in line with our commitment to EDI. And as I said, leading with that inclusion piece at TPP is really important to us. So as part of our Giving Back program, we offer grants to organizations whereby we gift them £5,000 towards a recruitment campaign, and then we take them on a journey with us to support them in recruiting to that particular position, but actually taking them through revising their processes and really understanding their EDI strategy, their aims, and how we can support them with that. So we have grant applications that come into us. We do 2 to 3 every year, and that can be for a paid-for role or a trustee vacancy, for example. And then we shortlist our winner and sort of take it from there. It very much initially centered around wanting to ensure that we could demonstrate good practice within the sector. And if we could develop these really strong case studies of supporting organizations with their EDI sort of objectives and improving their inclusive recruitment processes, we could showcase that to the rest of the sector, and in the hope that other organizations will learn and adopt these best practice approaches to their recruitment. At the same time, coming back to your earlier point, there's benefit in it for us as well, in the sense that the consultants who work on these grant campaigns learn so much in that process. It's very much educational for both the client and for our consultants, and we have specialists who support us with that and make sure that it's a learning process. We always talk about that journey when it comes to diversity and inclusion. So that is, is part and parcel of it, is ensuring that we learn and able then to demonstrate why it is important to take that approach to recruitment. The other thing that it really sort of helps with is getting close to the organization, really understanding what they are trying to achieve. So for example, we can really support them with role design, and in that remove some of those barriers that make recruitment challenging for themselves, but also for us as agencies, where potentially they're asking for qualifications that in reality shouldn't necessarily be a requirement for that role. So our ability to then really consult with them and sort of challenge their thinking on certain things makes the whole process so much more consultative and really deepens our relationship and understanding of that client. So that's been a really kind of interesting offering to the sector, and we take that approach to all the recruitment campaigns that we undertake at TPP. So, all our consultants are trained on role design, for example, and with every client briefing that they have, they will really be trying to understand the role a bit better and advising and that sort of thing. So it's been really helpful in demonstrating to the sector where we add value, where our expertise lie, and how we differentiate our approach from other approaches.
Yeah, I really love that. I love the idea of really explicitly focusing on best practice, and doing it in a way that obviously the charity, the recipient of the grant, benefits, so they're engaged. but you're doing something that benefits the whole industry, the whole sector. But of course, it comes back and benefits you as a recruiter as well, because the better your clients understand how to recruit well, the easier it is to work with them. And I guess the more consultative you can be. I think it reminds me of some people tell me they're kind of stuck in a transactional relationship with clients.
Yeah.
And in one sense, it almost feels like a really good just training ground for you and your consultants to be able to sit down with a client and say, look, this is almost our gift to you, but what we're going to do is something amazing. And we're going to, and part of the deal is we can then take it out and tell people how good it is. So I guess for recruiters who feel like they're being a bit transactional in a moment, some kind of version of this feels like quite a powerful way out of that.
Yeah. And I think that the onus is really on us to shift the relationship out of that transactional mode by being more consultative. And I think when you operate as an agency that in our case, obviously I really value the fact that we have different services that we can offer our clients. I think it's that ability to really tailor and customize how we work that by default really results in coming away from transactional recruitments, because you are just understanding everything a lot better, and you getting it's a two-way process. The engagement is not just one way, whereby you are sort of asking questions, but actually they become curious about you in turn. And I think that is when the relationship becomes more dynamic, and there are just better outcomes for both parties in that type of relationship or interaction.
Absolutely, yeah. I think sometimes we're in danger of putting hiring managers on a pedestal, and what I mean by that is maybe over respecting how much experience or expertise they have in hiring. Of course, there isn't a job title of hiring manager. No one is 100% hiring manager. They are running a fundraising team, or heading up a finance division. Recruitment is something they do. Hiring is something they do. Sometimes they're able to do it themselves and it's difficult. Sometimes they have to use external support or even internal other teams to help them. But it's not easy. They're not experts and it's not their full-time job. Mm-hmm. So actually recruiters need to sit down with them, not in a transactional and say, tell me what to do, because actually most hiring managers don't have the right answer to that question. They might have an answer, but are they actually confident? Whereas, the way you described it is brilliant. You sit down with them, it's a two-way conversation. You're really understanding what they need. And then you're consulting them, you're advising them, and you're getting to the point where you're doing that best practice that you've talked about and that you've showcased.
I also think that really helps, again, to make that to demonstrate that value. When you are working with line managers, and let's face it, it's probably not high on their list of things that they enjoy doing, the recruitment, because there's so much else that they need to be focusing on, and in the charity sector, it's often sort of there are time pressures attached to that. It's always a bit of we needed them yesterday sort of thing, and there's that urgency which really does make it challenging. And one of the things that an approach like ours does is allows us to really sort of think about the organization's needs, really have that in-depth conversation around their pain points, understanding where we can add value, and really being quite explicit about what it is that we are going to do, the solutions that we are going to sort of apply in that scenario, or solutions that we could suggest. I think as recruiters, we can easily sort of make assumptions about the things that our clients know about what we do. And the reality is, what I've learned through the project very much is that we need to spell out and sort of, not take for granted that they know that we have these extensive networks, for example, and actually be very clear on what it is that we do as recruiters, even the basic steps. And I think that is where we sometimes undervalue ourselves, in the sense that we make those assumptions. So we just assume that they know all the work that goes into, hiring for a, fundraiser, for example, when I think when you start to break it down and you explain what it is that you are going to do in quite a clear way, there's much more of an appreciation and then, sort of that they attach more value to what you are bringing to the table, rather than, you're going to send them CVs and, often that is what it comes down to, which, as we know, is not what we do.
Yeah, I sometimes call it the black box recruitment. We just go in and say, "Oh yeah, I'll do your recruitment for you." That allows that forces the client to project their understanding of recruitment onto us.
Yeah.
Which means we've lost control. So we don't know their previous experiences, who they've worked with in the past. Chances are, I think for most things you don't know about, you think they're easier than they are. So it's like, oh, just find me the right person.
Yeah.
So to break that down, in a consultative, meaningful way, and say, right, okay, these are the things we do. This is best, this is good. This is what we need to do. Really can open the eyes of so many hiring managers to say, oh wow, you're really doing a lot for me. I can value what you do here. And sometimes then they are more likely to help us get through the difficult bits. They can then understand why they need to provide feedback more quickly after an interview, for example.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's just black box, it's like, well, you do the recruitment and I'll get someone at the end of the process.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And also, I think evidencing, I think a lot of your guests on the podcast talk about the importance of data and insights, evidencing the approach that you're going to take with data that supports that, or, a case study where you've just taken that approach and the outcomes that you've got from that, really backing it up is so important in the process as well, to ensure that organizations really understand and buy into, why you are the right recruiter for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone is talking about AI-powered recruiters, but what does that actually look like? With Atlas as your CRM, it means every interaction with your candidate is automatically captured and searchable. If they mention their salary in an email, it's instantly recorded without you having to write anything. And behind the scenes, Atlas discovers every company that a candidate has worked for, the industries those companies operate in, as well as things like company size and description. All this means you can do your job much faster and add more value to your clients. To learn more about Atlas, go to recruitwithatlas.com. Now, we've talked about the journey you've been on to change how you offer your services and how you've become more consultative. Now, you're a COO. Like, in my mind, that means your job is changing the organization, making the organization work, and then improving it, right? So you take people through change processes, through transformation processes, and it's hard. So how did that feel to change the whole organization in terms of looking at the value you add and then how you communicate that value to your clients and how you become more consultative? How did that feel to you and to the organization?
Yeah. I mean, it felt a bit daunting at the start, particularly, in the context of this particular project, partly because, some of it was centered around pricing, it was around what rates are we charging, and, the sort of concern around how are we going to kind of bring everybody on board with understanding that this isn't about increasing rates, that actually what we are doing is, going to be adding more value to how we work with clients and developing services, etc. So, the first thing with any kind of change management project is around clarity, the why are we doing that? And then being clear about what the outcomes are that we are working towards wanting to achieve. And then I suppose the role that they will play in that journey. So it's, for me, it is very much around clarity, making sure that you make them understand the why behind the change. I think that concern around us sort of increasing rates, that dissipated quite quickly, to be honest, in the process, because it became quite clear quite quickly, and there was quite a lot of evidence to kind of show that there were a lot of other, when I want to say unintended consequences, but they were very intentional consequences of this project, whereby, it was obvious that we were creating services that they would really be quite keen to talk to their clients about, that were a little bit different, that really elevated their conversations with their hiring managers or with HR contacts, where they were able to be much more consultative. So actually that fear, as I say, wasn't really a barrier in any way to the change. I think it was also important to involve everyone. So we had a sort of a core leadership team who were overseeing the project, and as you know, myself and the two of us sort of led on that over the 12 months of working together. But it meant that we had to bring everyone along on that journey in different guises, whether that was through focus groups or through, testing the market or whatever it was. Everybody was involved. I also felt that the positioning of this change was really key, in that I always came back to sort of saying to the consultants, and the learning extended to everybody at TPP, our support staff, everyone, was that this was an opportunity to really develop ourselves. It was an opportunity to learn more about how we can approach recruitment in a slightly different way, and be more consultative and add more value to our clients and to our candidates, for that matter, because it impacts just as much on the candidate experience. And then the other real sort of game changer, I think, in terms of the project, was demonstrating to the consultants that actually they would have more negotiation levers through this project. And we know that negotiation, in the context of recruitment, is something that consultants are a bit like, oh, here we go, we're talking about money, and where do we go with this? And really, the change was centered around developing their confidence with negotiations and giving them more tools and approaches when it came to sometimes those difficult conversations. So, I think it was a journey that we all went on together. Change is never easy, but I think it was a really insightful sort of process going through that period, and seeing how people's mindsets really shifted towards, this is not about price, this is about the value that we are adding and how we want to be perceived differently in the market, and the experience that we want our clients and candidates to have working with us.
Yeah. Thanks for kind of explaining that from your perspective. It's really interesting to hear again. I think, with any change, and I was with you on this one, there's going to be fear. I don't like change. I'd love everything to stay exactly the same all the time. But we don't get that. And also there are things in our lives that are difficult that we think, well, actually it would be great if that wasn't so horrible. Negotiation being a real classic example. I don't know many recruiters who think, oh yeah, I can't wait till we get to the negotiation part of this. But when you can show that actually a change is going to empower people or give people more tools, solve their problems. It's less focused on the outcome of, rates are going to go up, which, as you say, might actually cause more fear not less. But if you say, hang on, for example, negotiation is a challenging thing, we can give you the tools and the confidence as much as anything to sit down with your clients and have a really different experience. That changes how people experience that change and how they see that. So but really, really nicely kind of explained there. Now, I'm guilty of this. I think most of the industry is guilty of this. If we look at LinkedIn and everything else, when we talk about recruitment, we almost always talk about perm recruitment. All the examples are perm recruitment. Yeah, someone suggested that's because temp recruiters have their heads down filling bookings. They're too busy to talk about themselves. But temp recruitment is possibly more valuable, I think, than perm recruitment in terms of industry revenue in the UK at least. Now you've got a temp background, and you have some really strong temp consultants and temp services in TPP. From your perspective, what's the difference in how clients value temp recruitment versus perm recruitment? What are the similarities, and where are the differences that we can learn from?
I think in terms of temp recruitment, just thinking about it in the context of our sector, it is something that our clients value quite highly, particularly if you think of, when there might be more demand for temp support within organizations. So you just have to, look around the world at the moment to know that some organizations are directly sort of dealing with, conflicts around the world, for example, or, natural disasters, cost of living crisis. That in itself has had a massive impact on a lot of organizations having much more demand for their services. And that in itself, really means that organizations need to be able to have capacity to respond to those changing situations. And, as a provider to the sector, we like to think that we can really help in those particular scenarios. So I think, you often, if I think back to the project and some of the conversations that we had with some of the temp consultants, there was a classic scenario of a temp consultant who we were sort of having a focus group conversation around, if a client comes to you and says, I need XYZ, and that you've got that person available, and you don't have to do very much. You probably just need to give them a call and check that they're available, and they could probably start the next day. And that was pretty easy because I knew that person, and I could give them someone. I had a solution for them straight away. So potentially would charge them a lower rate in that scenario. And it was a very interesting conversation for us to dissect together as a group and talk about. And, I think that reflection piece on where we add value to that process by sort of reminding ourselves and that particular consultant that, the reason that they're able to do that is because of years and years of experience and network building and good candidate management and deep relationships. And that is where the value lies, in supplying that temporary person at that given point. And, so I think that was something that really kind of sat with me, and something that we still reflect on now, as a mini cohort when we do come together, is really reminding ourselves of where we add value when it comes to temp recruitment, and not undervaluing our services just because it's perceived to be easy that we can access a good talent pool immediately, because a lot of resources gone into actually getting to that point in the first place.
Yeah, that's so important. I think, especially if you're an experienced consultant, if you're an experienced expert in anything, if something is easy, that doesn't mean it's not highly valued by the client. If you can do something quicker than your competitors because it's easy to you, that doesn't mean the client expects it to be cheaper.
Exactly.
They're probably willing to pay more. So it's stepping out of your perception of your service to think, hang on, what am I adding here? How does this compare to my competitors? And what do my clients value from this? Um, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, sorry. Years ago, this is why my brain's trying to dredge up the memory. Um, I did a kind of 10 steps of perm recruitment to kind of, it was a little 1-page document to kind of showcase the value of perm recruitment. And that worked okay. Yeah, I think there's better things you can do, but yeah, it wasn't a bad idea. And then it worked well enough that we said, well, let's do one for temp recruitment. And we realized that the perm recruitment service started pretty much, almost everything started from the moment you pick up the job. So you pick up the job and then there's 10 things you do. And with temp recruitment, 8 or 9 of those things happened before you picked up the booking. So it's completely inverted. It's that kind of classic iceberg analogy.
Yeah.
Everything's already happened. And that's a real challenge. As you say, clients really value having a fast, temporary workforce option. But it can be challenging to sell how much you do for the client because it's already happened.
Yeah.
I think it's so important for recruitment leaders with temporary functions to think, hang on, how do we package this? How do we show how much value there is to our clients, especially if it's already happened?
Yeah.
But of course, in the long term, you can't afford to keep doing it if you don't charge for what you've already done.
Yeah.
You can't just
and
charge
I
for
think
two things.
I think with new clients in particular, it's always a bit more challenging to demonstrate that value of what have we done to be able to supply this person for you at the short notice or whatever. With existing clients, I think that is the beauty of temp recruitment, is that they, through having had access to good, high quality temporary staff at good turnaround and really good service with that, in terms of communication from you as a consultant and clarity with a temp and all of that, they really do value that, and that really can strengthen that relationship, and where you don't need to necessarily prove your worth every time, because it's on the strength of what you've built up and what you've proven over a period of time. And then I suppose what you need to do is then leverage off of that by really being able to take that testimonial, that case study, that evidence to those new clients and sort of say, this is how this organization uses me, and this is where I've added value and what they value and how I work, and sort of work that way around.
Yeah, completely. The cost of not being able to convince new clients of how good you are is that they then say, well, I'm only willing to agree to a mid to low rate, let's say. And then that can potentially be locked in for the relationship with that client. So there's a real danger there that over time, the client really appreciates the value, but we're not very good at then putting our prices up. And of course, we've paid for that initial period. Even if we do put the prices up, that initial 6 months, that initial first year, we've been doing it cheap in order to prove ourselves. So it's so important that we're able somehow, great examples there, testimonials, referrals, things like that, so that a new client, even without working with us, can say, wow, I know you're going to create value for me. I know this is worth the fee that you're suggesting. Yeah.
I mean, starting any relationship off the strength of being cheap is not a good place to start, I think.
And over time, you're not getting paid enough to then invest in that relationship.
And sustain that service.
Whereas someone pays you more money, you can say, great, I can afford to invest in this relationship. It gets better and better. So it's a huge moment in the relationship, that first point. Okay, so much useful stuff. I'm going to, we could talk for ages, but I'm going to wrap up with an even bigger question. You've gone through this process of thinking, how can you make sure your clients value your services more? From an industry perspective, how can we make recruitment more valued by our clients? How can we as an industry do that, and how can other recruitment leaders learn from what you've been through?
No surprise, I think, based on what we've discussed today already, that I would probably say the first thing is ensuring that we take an ethical approach in absolutely everything that we do. How we treat people, but in particular, I think how we treat candidates, for me, is a massive indicator of the industry as a whole improving. So that would be the first thing. The other point I would make is the importance of training, coaching, mentoring, and developing our employees. And I say this again, not just our consultants. I believe that should be across the whole business. Investing in building their confidence, their expertise, the skills that they have as recruiters. In turn, you will undoubtedly offer your clients and your candidates a better, more valuable service if your consultants are more confident, really have the skills that they need, and they've been developed and coached and mentored. And then I think it's what the other point for me is what we've already discussed is that the importance of really evidencing what it is that we do behind the scenes, not making assumptions about what our clients think that we do. Being confident in sort of saying, well, this is the network, these are the networks that we tap into, and this is the way that we go about recruiting. That is why we claim to be an inclusive recruiter, and why we are confident we'll be able to reach a wider pool of candidates, and being quite sort of explicit about that approach. And as I say, backing that up with data, insights. So for example, if you are going to claim that, you can find people quickly for them, are you able to evidence what your time to fill is, across the organization or within a particular job functional area? Do you have that data to really back up that claim? And I think those are all the things, to me, that as an industry, if we do, and we hold each other more accountable in some respects, that we can elevate the perception of recruitment.
Excellent. Well, what a note to end on. Thank you so much for sharing your experience and your views. I think there's some really useful things for everyone to take away. Whether it's this idea of your process is being audited by the REC or equivalent, that kind of training on being consultative, and even helping hiring managers through that process to understand best practice. There's so many ideas there. So Tracey, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, John.
Thanks again to Tracey for sharing how she's focused her whole organization on the value they create for their clients. 3 things stood out for me. First, her view that cost isn't always the primary issue for clients, even in the charity sector. I love the way she talks about the onus being on the recruiter to shift out of transactional mode and consult with clients on what they really need. Second, the idea of having a process for showcasing best practice recruitment to her sector. Hiring managers are not experts in recruitment, and recruiters have the opportunity to show clients what they don't know and help them to get better outcomes. And third, Tracey's point about the risk of pricing your service lower because it's easy. It's really important that experienced recruiters understand why they find something easy and the value that adds to their clients. If you found the show valuable, please leave a review and remember to subscribe or follow the show on your podcast app. You can also get more insights and inspiration by signing up to my added value emails on Substack. You can find the link in the show notes. Now, go create some value.
Thank you to Atlas for sponsoring the Value of Recruitment podcast. To learn more about how Atlas is creating an AI platform that helps recruitment agencies generate more placements with less effort, visit recruitwithatlas.com.